As of last week's chapter, well, the last chapter, because we were on break last week, we're now 30 chapters into the Sukuna fight, which is presumably the final battle of Jujutsu Kaisen, and I've got to say, I really love it. I think that the final battle has been absolutely fantastic thus far. And let me tell you why. But before we get into that, as always, if you haven't already, definitely be sure to like and subscribe. I'd like to try and hit at least 100 likes on today's video. Now then, let's get a little bit down to the specifics, shall we? For starters, I suppose what someone considers to be part of this final battle might vary. Specifically just if you consider Gojo versus Sukuna to be its own thing, or if you consider both of those two halves to be one fight. If you consider them to both be one big thing, I don't think there's any question that it's the best fight in the series. Obviously, it has an advantage from being like almost 30 chapters in length, but the content of this fight is so plentiful. There's so much going on in it that is all so well done. It's such a great showcasing of everything that the characters involved are capable of and what makes the power system of cursed energy so good. I've already talked about Gojo versus Sukuna at length more than once. So I don't need to go over again how that fight did such a phenomenal job just showing off all of the aspects of JJK's power system. But now what we've had in the follow-up with the raid against Ryomen Sukuna is the various different embodiments of the pinnacles of Jujutsu sorcery. We've had Kashima, we've had Higuruma, we've had Yuta, we've had Maki, who exists as a very interesting outlier, someone who is an anti-sorcerer almost, and we've seen them all be thrown up against the peak, against the king of curses himself, and we've seen how well they're all able to stack up to him individually, working together, using their different powers in tandem. Even people who, aren't the best, but are still competent, who are still trying and contributing in whatever ways they can. Something that I think a lot of JJK fights do really well is having multiple characters who are weaker than their singular opponent working together to overcome that gap in power. We've seen that many times. We saw it with Yuji and Nanami versus Mahito. We saw it with Yuji and Todo versus Hanami. We got it with the Dagon fight in Shibuya. We got it with the big Mahito fight in Shibuya. We didn't really get a ton of it during Culling Game. That was mostly dedicated to a lot of one-on-ones. But now, with this big final fight against Sukuna, we're getting back into the spirit of the best JJK fights, in which you have a group of people working together to exercise something much more powerful than them. And it's been fantastic thus far, watching them struggle against such a powerful being. Naturally, there have been a lot of people that have complained about the stuff that's been going on. They say the fight's been dragging on too long. They say that it's gotten repetitive with the formula, that Sukuna is just too strong, that there's no conceivable way for him to be beaten. And I just really can't help but disagree for a variety of reasons. I don't think the fight's gone on for too long. It's the final battle of the series. I would want it to be kind of long. Some series have a bit of an issue where you get to the final battle and it's really just kind of rushed. You look at Bleach, you look at the final battle against Yuan, and wow, it's like 3 chapters to end off an almost 700 chapter long series. That's not very satisfying. So, getting like somewhere in the ballpark at 30 chapters for the final fight of a just over 250 chapter long series, I'd say that's pretty good. I'd say that's a pretty good deal. And it's not as if nothing's been happening in these 30 chapters. It's not like Demon Slayer, where Muzan stands around and slashes around his tentacles for 20 chapters and doesn't do anything else. Yes, Sukuna's primary thing is strong cut, but, he's moving around. He's engaging in the dynamic choreography of JJK. And, his technique has a few different applications. He's got a little bit of versatility with the strong cut, and to the displeasure of some people, he's still got a little more left in his bag. He's got the fire arrow and whatever else is waiting for us there. He just landed a black flash for the first time last chapter, so there's still plenty of new stuff going on. And the thing that keeps it refreshing is seeing how the different characters are going to stack up against him. Some people would argue that this is boring and formulaic because the same thing keeps happening every time where, oh my god, Sukuna's unstoppable, what are we going to do? This person has shown up with their thing that's really notable and powerful. Oh wow, they're really pushing Sukuna a bit there, oh man, they're impressing him. But Sukuna isn't going all out yet, and then he fucking obliterates them with a really strong attack. Well, congratulations, you guys have discovered the formula for the majority of really big fights in shonen manga. This is not a unique thing. This happens all the time. But seeing how Sukuna responds to the different abilities being brought to the table is really neat. And beyond that, the thing that I really like is the way that he interacts with their characters. A lot of people don't really like what happened with Kashimo, and as far as the actual fight went with him, it was definitely quite underwhelming, but the characterization for Kashimo and Sukuna with that conversation they had was phenomenal. I mean, that was one of my favorite moments of the entire series last year. I thought that was absolutely great. And then we got the stuff with Higuruma, which was great for Higuruma. We got to really show off what Yuta was capable of, and, we got a really good tag team with him and Yuji and Rika out of it. We got to see someone challenge Sukuna's mindset and his values when it comes to sorcery, when Maki stepped up to fight him. Never been forced to take up a role and prove a point before. That's a really interesting position for Sukuna to be put into. And, obviously we're very interested in seeing what Kusakabe is going to do, because he's much weaker than everyone else that's gone up to fight Sukuna, as far as we can tell. It's not like he's a slouch, but he's no special grade. And he is a man with very good survival instincts. He is well aware of the fact that he is not remotely a top tier. So, seeing what this man is going to do to try to survive and buy time against the top of the verse is going to be really interesting. So, when you just boil it down to the basic narrative formula, I feel like you're just intentionally trying to find reasons to not enjoy it. Not to mention, I think the group battle format works really well for Sukuna as an antagonist, given his motivation, I suppose you could call it, which is to just see what can be done with Jujutsu sorcery. Sukuna doesn't necessarily love strength, though he loves being strong, and he likes to nurture strength in other people. He loves Jujutsu. It's really good that the main villain of the series really loves the power system and seeing everything that's capable within its confines and trying to push those confines. Throwing him up against all of these people who push the limits or break the rules of the system is bound to bring out a lot of really good characterization and character moments from him. And it has. Sukuna has always been a very entertaining antagonist because of his enjoyment of being the antagonist, of being a part of the power system. And this fight has just really shown that better than almost any of his other appearances throughout the series, which is what I would hope for, given that it's his ultimate and final appearance. You know, it's what we've been waiting for from him. People that say Sukuna is too strong, he has been lauded as the strongest sorcerer in history for the whole series. The fight with Gojo was to prove that he is stronger than Gojo, that he is the top dog, #1 in the verse. Why are you shocked that the strongest sorcerer in history is really strong? Significantly stronger than everyone else. Gojo was always in a whole world beyond everyone else. He was in a different league. If Gojo was here fighting everyone else like this, do you not think that he would perform similarly? Do you not think that he kind of dog walks almost everyone else in individual fights? We had that showcased in Shibuya, when he was put into a situation where he had to hold back against people weaker than some of the people being thrown against Sukuna. And, you know, that beating there was even more vicious. So, I don't know. I feel like the same sort of thing would happen here. I think there's just been sort of a disconnect for a lot of people, seeing as Sukuna was not as present throughout the series as Gojo, even though he was, you know, technically there the whole time. But didn't have as much of an active presence, didn't get hyped up as frequently as Gojo because he wasn't an active part of the world. So now most of the hype that Sukuna's been receiving has been condensed into a much smaller chunk of the series. But, you know, you go back and you look at Gojo scaring professional sorcerers into retirement just by looking at them when he was 7. Yeah, I think some of the sauce that's been given to Sukuna in this fight has been perfectly warranted. And you just have to read the fight to see that obviously Sukuna has been pushed. Even if he has not gone all out yet, even if he hasn't used everything in his arsenal, the man has been worn down. He has been beaten on, he's had his limbs cut off, he's been stabbed through the heart. He has definitely taken damage, you know, he has definitely been pushed in various instances. But there's always got to be the pendulum swing. You've always got to maintain the tension. And that's just what it is here. And I much prefer that over the protagonists just, you know, kind of easily beating the main villain. You know, just kind of steamrolling through it without too much issue. It's not very interesting. I find a situation like this where the protagonists are at a major disadvantage and they have to struggle for victory much more compelling. It's much more interesting. I feel a greater deal of suspense. I'm at the edge of my seat when I'm reading each chapter because I'm nervous about what's going to happen to these characters that I like. And I want to see how they're going to pull through and beat this guy. Because it's no sure thing. How are they going to pull it off? It seems so insurmountable. How can it be done? You know, with the Gojo and Sukuna fight, people were thinking, how is Gege going to make it so that Sukuna beats Gojo after the way this fight has been going, that's going to feel satisfying? And reading it week to week for a lot of people, it seemed really random, it seemed really unsatisfying. And then you went and reread the fight. And then you could see what was being built up throughout its entirety, and you realize, yeah, I could kind of see what was coming. It's much the same with this, in all honesty. You know, we already have the victory condition against Sukuna set up. It's waking Megumi back up. So it's really just a matter of creating the situation in which that can happen. How do we give Megumi back the will to live just enough for him to take back control and stop Sukuna? That's the win condition. And I definitely think that's achievable. At the very least, you know, if just killing Sukuna is not, that's something that I definitely think is. So, I don't know about you guys, but I am seated and eagerly awaiting to see how the rest of this fight is going to go. I do agree that it's probably got about a volume left in it. I do think we are in the latter stages of the fight, given how, you know, pretty much everyone's been worn down. We have expended almost everyone available to us. That is what the final stretch is going to look like. Yeah, I guess we're just going to have to wait and find out how the rest of it goes. But with that, that's all I got for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a new chapter. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.